Well, it's time to get my next special guest on my show now. And I've been waiting to get this gentleman on my show for a while now. Heard so much about him, and we have him finally, Daniel James, to my show. Welcome.
Oh, great. It's great to be here, mate. Thanks for asking me.
And how we're doing? How we doing on this fine day today?
Well, it's fabulously sunny, and we mustn't moan because we spend three-quarters of the year moaning about how cold and grey and dark it is. So I'm just happy, I'm happy to have the sun shining. And also, it fits in with my record because my record's about being sunny.
So true. I know you've been a busy man yourself. You've been around the country. You've been in different places promoting your single. How's that going?
Do you know what? It's been fantastic. The weekend we were down in West Wales, the further over at Haverfordwest in Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire. We did a Showboat Television over there, recorded an interview, and then I did a performance. And they took me to a place called Picton Castle, and it's really pretty, and they have great grounds. So basically, it's one of those like Royal Society gardens, and it's a walled garden, and there are all these people there going, "Oh, I love those roses," and things like that. And then suddenly they heard my song come on, and I'm cavorting round the gardens, and they're going, they're looking at all these roses, leaning over and smelling them, and you've got this big elephant lolling about me, doing me song. So it was quite good, but they were lovely. I mean, to be honest, I thought they were going to come over and say, "Do you mind? You're disturbing us." But actually, they were lovely, and they were saying things like, "Oh, do you mind us sitting here?" I went, "Not at all." I said, "I'm sorry to disturb you," and they said, "No, we're enjoying the track," and they were all tapping their feet. So it was a big walled garden with really old trees. So I kind of did a performance there, and Showboat TV filmed it, and then they took me to the front of the castle and did an interview, and there were all these swifts, these little birds hanging around as we were doing it. It was really good. The only thing was it was scorching hot, and when you're sitting there and someone's interviewing and you're looking directly into the sun, so it'll either look like I was crying during the
Mm.
interview or that my eyes just weren't open at all. So, but we'll see. It was great. So we went to Picton Castle, then we went to Pembroke
Mm.
Castle, and then we went to Tenby. So we've done a bit of West Wales, and we're travelling all over really. We were up in Hertfordshire last week in Tring, and we've been all the way along the Thames from St Catherine's Dock, Canary Wharf, Tower Bridge, and then right up to Teddington Lock. And so we've kind of travelled the Thames as well. So we're going to go up north. We're going to go to Scotland. We're going to go to Ireland. People will be, by the end of it, they'll be lying down in submission, saying, "Yes, okay, we give in."
Yes, brilliant. So glad the tour's going well, the promo. That's when you do the single, it's not an easy job, is it? Touring and promoting the single, you have to put a lot of work and dedication to get your product out, don't you?
Do you know what, Danny? I've been given a second chance. I gave up the business, or the business gave me up. I had a nervous breakdown when Yell came to an end, and I left the business totally and never thought I'd ever be back. And the only reason I came back was because during lockdown, I started to go out for walks because I was on my own. All my family were hundreds of miles away. And I started to go for walks, and I suddenly started to write songs again. I hadn't written a song in like 20 odd years. Never thought I'd do it again. And I started to record songs again. And I tentatively put a couple on Spotify and Amazon and iTunes. And I got calls from loads of community radio stations saying, "Are you the bloke that used to be in Yell?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, right, okay." And they all wanted me to go on and talk about my career in Yell and stuff, which was back in the 90s. And suddenly the records were shooting up the Heritage chart. Mike Reed's got this Heritage chart. And before you know it, I'd had three or four hits on the Heritage chart and the number one with "Do You Remember Me?" And I suddenly thought to myself, I'm actually enjoying this because now I'm kind of more in control. When I was in Yell, don't get me wrong, it was fabulous. But once you sign a record contract, sometimes you can be a little bit trapped and you lose the power to make some decisions yourself. Um, Whereas now I can, I write the songs, I work either produce them myself or work with a great engineer and producer and some musicians. And then I've got a great team around me, Ellen Mark, that do videos. I've got a really bunch of great people that believe in me and that are great to work with. And I'm having the time of my life.
That's
I
really
really
nice.
am.
Really nice to hear, Dan. And I was going to ask you with a heritage chart. It's great that there's a chart for people who have like a career revival second time round.
Do you know what? Mike Reed, people may remember him from Top of the Pops, from Pop Quiz, which actually is back on BBC Four on a Sunday night. And I'm doing some promos for Mike around the country to promote it. Mike Reed obviously has an address book to be the envy, because he's been in the business since the 70s and he knows everybody, all the musicians. And I think during the lockdown, a lot of musicians were saying, we're writing new material. These are people like Boy George, Kim Wilde, Nick Kershaw, Paul Young, Texas, Noel Gallagher, the Pet Shop Boys, and many more. And they were writing material. But if you listen to Radio 1, and even sometimes Radio 2 and lots of BBC stations, they're not really playing those artists very much. And Mike said, what we need is a radio show and a chart for people to buy your new music, because if you look around the country, the Rewind tours and the Butlins tours, they're full of those acts that I've just mentioned, and they're all selling out. So there's an audience. So Mike came up with the Heritage Chart, and 95 countries around the world are voting on it. And basically, you can go online to www.heritagechart.co.uk. You can see the whole chart. There's 50 songs on there. Well, there's a top 40 and then there's 10 breakers, or top 30 and 20 breakers. And as I say, 95 countries go online. They vote for their favorite songs. The chart grows, and then there's a TV show goes out every week, a bit like Top of the Pops. It's an hour full of those artist videos, and people vote on them. And as I say, it's thriving. It goes to 95 countries around the world. And if any of your listeners want to go to www.heritagechart.co.uk, they can see my songs on there. I'm in the top 10 at the moment, and I would really appreciate their vote. And they can vote for anyone else as well. They can watch the videos on the chart show, and it's all online. And it also, the local channels, I think it's Channel 7 around the country, they all have their own local TV stations. Well, they show the Heritage Chart TV show a couple of times a week, and so do Talking Pictures, and so do XPTV1. So it's gaining in exposure. And as I say, I'm climbing up the chart at the moment, and would be very grateful for any votes.
Brilliant. Well, Dan, I've just got a couple of minutes left to go. Set your spirit free. I've just given it a couple of listens, actually, and the more you listen to it, the more it grows on you. It's a very summery track, and it's got kind of a bit of a dance feel to it as well, and maybe a little bit of a 90s feel to it as well.
I think that might be the strings. The thing is, I originally released it in 2020, but it was at the start of lockdown, and nobody picked up on it. There were no stations playing it. It just kind of crept around a little bit. And at Christmas, I released a Christmas single called Silent Night, Oh Holy Night, and it did pretty well. And the guy that does my promo, Steve Osborne Media, he got loads of feedback from BBC stations after Christmas saying, who did this Silent Night, Oh Holy Night? They didn't know who I was. And he said, do you remember Yell? And they went, oh yeah, instant replay, let's go round again. And one thing leads to another. He said, that's the guy. And they said, quite a lot of them said, we didn't think they could sing in Yell. This guy can sing. So they said, what else has he got? So he sent them the original version of Set Your Spirit Free, and they said, we really like that. So Steve said to me, why don't you give it a bit of a remix? Well, actually, we did better than that. I went in the studio, I put a really slappy bass on it, loads of percussion, some more strings, and added some vocals, and really made it kind of upbeat and summery. Because you know what? We've had such a long, grey, miserable winter. I just wanted everyone to have a piece of music that they could put on and would make them feel happy in the summer.
It's a very warm song and nice warm lyrics to it when you listen to the lyrics as well. When you hear a song, it's good to have a beat, but when you listen to lyrics as well, there's more to a song than just the beat. But the Set Your Spirit has got a good meaning to it.
Thank you. It's just meant to be upbeat and happy, and I hope people will like it,
Yeah. Well, Brill Dan, I'm going to get the track on my show now because we're just running out of time. But just want to say thank you for joining me on today's show, and we're going to get your single on my programme now. Thanks for joining me.
Danny, thank you for having me on, and I hope your listeners like the song.